You didn't think you'd be a millionaire by now. You didn't need a perfect life. You just thought you'd feel more certain, more settled, more like you knew what you were doing. Maybe the career would finally make sense. Maybe money wouldn't feel so tight. Maybe you'd have a house, someone to come home to, a family, a place that felt like yours. You never had a detailed 5-year plan. You just assumed that by this age something would have clicked. And then one ordinary day, you look around and realize it hasn't. You're working, paying bills, answering texts, getting through the week. Nothing is necessarily falling apart. That's what makes it difficult to explain. Your life can look fine and still feel strangely unfinished. And somewhere in the back of your mind is the thought you rarely say out loud. I thought I'd be further along by now. Then someone buys a house. A friend gets promoted. Someone you went to school with gets married. Someone has a second child. You scroll past it. You tap like. You mean it. You're happy for them. And then you put your phone down. Something changes because maybe you don't want their life. Maybe you don't even want what they have. Maybe you're grieving the life you thought you'd have. That's a different kind of pain. You imagined a future. You didn't necessarily plan every detail, but you assumed certain things would happen. And now you're old enough to realize they might not. There's no ceremony for that. No one sends a card. No one asks how you're doing. You just quietly let go of a version of yourself you once expected to meet. And sometimes you mistake that grief for failure. The older you get, the harder uncertainty feels. At 22, not knowing is normal. At 30, you start wondering why you still don't know. At 35, the question can become heavier. What's taking so long? That's when a feeling becomes a story. I'm behind. I'm late. I should have figured this out already. And eventually, you stop saying, I'm behind. You start thinking, I'm the kind of person who is behind. That's the dangerous part. Because now the belief starts making decisions for you. You don't start the business. You don't change careers. You don't ask someone out. You don't take the risk. Not because you don't want those things, because starting now feels like admitting you should have started 10 years ago. Stop there. That's the trap. The belief that you're late can become the reason you never begin. And maybe you've been living by a deadline you never consciously chose. By a certain age, you should have the career, the money, the relationship, the house, the certainty. But who wrote that schedule? Your parents, your friends, the culture around you, the people you follow online, or an imaginary version of yourself you created when you were 25? Behind whom? That's the question, because behind sounds like a fact. But behind is meaningless without a destination, and you can't measure your distance from a destination you never chose. That changes the question completely. Instead of, why am I not further along? You have to ask, further along toward what? This is where comparison gets dangerous. You know your own life from the inside. Every mistake, every bad decision, every night you wondered what you were doing, every opportunity you missed. But when you look at someone else, you see the outside, the promotion, the wedding, the new house, the vacation, the announcement. You don't see the years between the pictures, and even if their life really is going well, good, let it. Their success doesn't make your life smaller. Their timing doesn't become your deadline. Because ambition and comparison are not the same thing. Ambition looks forward. Comparison looks sideways. Ambition says, I want to build something better. Comparison says, I need to prove I'm not behind. One gives you a direction, the other gives you a scoreboard, and you were never meant to live your life on someone else's scoreboard. Maybe that's why you can feel successful in one part of your life and completely lost in another. You can have a decent job and still have no idea where it's going. You can have money and still have no sense of purpose. You can have a family and still wonder who you are outside of it. You can be alone and feel both relieved and afraid. Real life is rarely as clean as the timelines we imagined. You can be grateful for what you have and still be disappointed by where you are. Those things can exist together. You don't have to turn your life into a failure story just because it didn't follow the plan, and you don't have to pretend you're satisfied if you're not. You just have to become honest. What do I actually want now? Not what would impress people, not what would make you look successful, not what you think you should want at your age. What do you actually want? That question is uncomfortable, because once you stop measuring yourself against everyone else, you lose the excuse of the timeline. Now you have to choose, and maybe you don't know yet. That's allowed. You don't need a 10-year plan. You need a direction. Sometimes direction begins with a simple realization. I don't want this anymore. That's enough. You may regret some of the years you've lost. Maybe you did waste time. Most people do. But regret doesn't have to become an identity. It can simply tell you what you don't want to repeat. You can regret the years behind you without handing over the years ahead. And this matters because age does matter. Not because you're running out of time to become someone impressive. Because your remaining time is too valuable to spend chasing a life you never actually chose. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you've simply reached the point where the old timeline stopped making sense. And that's not failure, that's information. The person you are now may want something different from the person you thought you'd become 10 years ago. Maybe growing up isn't finally becoming the person you imagined. Maybe it's becoming honest enough to let that person go. So stop asking, why am I not further along? Ask something harder. What is worth walking toward now? That question doesn't give you a map. It gives you something better. A direction that belongs to you. You don't have to arrive before everyone else. You don't need an impressive life. You need a life that feels like yours. And maybe that's what the slow walker is really about. Not moving slowly because you've given up. Moving deliberately because you've stopped letting everyone else decide where you're supposed to go. Some roads take longer. Some answers arrive late. That doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're still walking. So if you're still figuring it out, you're in the right place. Not because we have all the answers, because nobody does, but because there are questions worth walking with. Take your time, look up, keep walking, walk with us.